Hello, 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 glorious listeners, everyone, welcome back to another wonderful episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast. Nolan, you're here, as you always are.
But not as I always am, and thank you for that intro, Count Olaf.
Count Olaf? Did I sound like Count Olaf then?
Anytime I hear you say hello, 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 I just see Neil Patrick Harris in a weird get-up.
Should I be offended?
No, because I think you could pull off Count Olaf pretty well.
Should I be offended?
No, he's a cool character.
Fair enough. The interesting thing today, Nolan, on episode 26 of It's a Wonderful Podcast, is that you may notice that the movie we are talking about today is House of Usher, or The Fall of the House of Usher, depending on who you ask.
It does not include the R&B singer Usher. I feel like we should get that out of the way.
No, it does not. This movie stars Vincent Price,
who I'm a fan of now.
So naturally, we had to bring a guest on, didn't we?
We did? Oh yes, I can see there is a person on the other line.
We had to bring a guest on. Guest, please reveal yourself.
Stefano. No, it's not. That's for... Hey, it's Kimber. You guys know me. I'm always here. It seems like when it's time to talk about the incomparable Vincent Price, and I'm excited to talk about this movie.
I'm just glad she didn't say Carmelita Spatz.
Kimber Barrett, Odd Shaped Channel's finest woman.
The only one.
Well, Mavis counts as well, I suppose.
And the world's... Mavis technically would count.
Well, we have two, because our
That's
other
true.
cats
Vinny's
Vinny.
a girl as well.
There's going to be like a contest to see who's the best one there, and I'm pretty sure Kimber's going to win.
That is true.
Totally not biased, but I've never met the cats, so...
Kimber certainly wins on the world's biggest Vincent Price fan competition.
I believe that.
Which is
I don't know about world biggest, but I am a pretty big fan, for sure. I'd say Victoria Price probably wins the world's biggest Vincent Price fan.
I think Victoria Price has unfair benefits, though. Considering she is his daughter.
I see.
Who tours around literally talking about her father. And it's the best thing, speaking of which she is in London in November, and I really want to go.
Yeah, you have to go.
I mean, meeting a Price, can you imagine my face?
I'm imagining it right now, and it's not really a face, it's kind of like, you know that meme of someone just looking very happy? That's what I imagine your face is going to be.
It would be tears. Kimber knows full well that I would be in tears.
She looks quite a bit like him as well.
She really does. She really does. She really does look like him. Anyway.
He's a good-looking man, or was a good-looking man.
Very fine-looking gentleman. We're not just talking about Victoria Price today. We are talking about this wonderful movie that we gave Kimber the right to pick. She is our first true guest when we're both here. Obviously, we had Brandon guest hosting.
We did not have Brandon guest host. We've been through this. He kidnapped me and tried to replace me.
Yes, that's your belief.
No, that is my reality. I'm still scarred from him reading all those physics books.
Damn it, Brandon. No, we had Brandon guest host, but Kimber is our first true guest because we are both here, and Kimber is here, and this is a three-way podcast. It's going to be great.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'm on board. I was excited when you said we were going to be doing another Price thing, because I'm like a Vincent Price virgin, except from this year. I've in the past couple of months I watched House on Haunted Hill, Fall of House of Usher, Edward Scissorhands about 60 times for some weird reason. I don't know why, I just fell in love with it. But I love how sort of I don't want to say enigmatic, but kind of whenever Vincent Price is on screen, it's sort of like I'm in awe of him, and I can't explain why, but it's awesome.
Kimber,
sure.
Would you explain why Vincent Price is so awable, if that's a word?
Oh, it's just really hard to put into words why he's
It
so
is.
special.
It really
The
is.
voice is a huge part of it for sure, but really no one had a charisma quite like his, especially in the horror genre, to have somebody who's just so charming. Like, whether he's playing the villain or he's just a person who's in the movie somewhere, even in a heroic role, you love this guy. Like, you see him do horrible things sometimes, but he comes at it with such charm that you can't help but to side with him most of the time, especially in movies like House on Haunted Hill, where you get the great banter with usually you get a lot of great banter with him and some of the female characters. He was just special. No one's really like him, and he was such a tall guy, so he could be really imposing and terrifying, but at the same time, he could bring you the warmth of, like, your grandfather, like he does in Edward Scissorhands.
Exactly.
So I just think you had such an interesting person who was such a well-rounded person in real life, and he just brings that onto the screen, and you want to hang out with the guy, for sure.
The good thing about him is that I don't know much about him because I haven't done much research, but he doesn't seem like he'd be a very egotistical guy. He seems like a very humble sort of person.
Oh, he famously was. He was a big-time cook and party host when he was around, and he's pretty famous for not wanting to talk about himself, is that he really wanted to hear about who his guests were as people. That was his favorite part, and serving them delicious food and just, having conversations to make them feel special. And I feel like he does that even through the screen to his audience, somehow.
Yeah, I mean, he was a massive art collector as well.
I believe that. And I also believe that you are the kind of person, Morgan, and maybe you, Kimber, as well, who would host Vincent Price-themed dinner parties.
Certainly would.
I have his cookbook.
Exactly. Get the cookbook out.
I will be getting that cookbook later.
Get the cookbook out, cook some Price meals. It'll be absolutely perfect. I always put my love of Price, and it was, of course, Kimber, you were the one who I don't want to, not necessarily introduced me to Price, but helped me fall in love with him, guided me through my Price journey.
The price was right.
The price was very right. Who hosts The Price is Right?
I have no idea.
In
Should
Britain,
have been Vincent Price.
In Britain, at a certain point, Bruce Forsyth hosts The Price is Right.
I know that name, but I can't put a face
Bruce
to it.
Forsyth used to host Strictly Come Dancing.
Well, we will forget about that. I'm just thankful you didn't say James Corden.
No, James Corden doesn't host them. Anyway, we're not talking about The Price is Right. I always put my love of Price down to the fact that he always seemed to toe the perfect line between just being ever so slightly fun over the top. And he knew exactly what kind of movie he was in every single time. He knew exactly when to turn on a bit of creep factor. He knew exactly when to turn on the wit or the humour or just a little glimpse of a smile, and you can never take your eyes off him for a second when he's on your huge whatever screen you're watching Price on, because he'll have this little twinkle in his eye or this little curl of the lip that can change any word he says into just meaning something, either whether it's more fun or whether it's just that more chilling. He's unlike any other horror actor in the sense that he seemed to always have the most fun while playing sometimes despicable people.
There's usually a thing like with this one. Not only was I couldn't take my eyes off him when he was speaking because of his great voice, I could not take my eyes off that blonde hair, because that was an odd choice. He looked like what I imagine Grindelwald would look like in real life.
Well, I mean, yeah, like we said, we picked Kimber picked House of Usher for this episode. I want to ask you, Kimber, why House of Usher? What is it about this one that sort of stands out firstly?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this one. In fact, this is the first of 8 separate Edgar Allan Poe films that they did with Roger Corman, as well as some of the same stars with Vincent Price and Mark Damon and Myrna Fahey. And so I think it's a great introduction. I know that you're a fan, Morgan, of Edgar Allan Poe. So it just seemed appropriate to start out with the first one that they did, and this one just has a special place in my heart, because as I was telling you earlier, I have it on VHS, and I've seen it 100 times, and I thought it might be a good introduction, because I assumed that Nolan hadn't seen any of the Poe stuff with him, and it's certainly some of his most iconic work.
You would be correct.
Is that a correct assumption?
Yes.
Perfect place to start then with the first Price Poe film, because like Kimber said, there's a lot, and Roger Corman always directed them, and Roger Corman as well. He was a director that knew exactly what movie he was directing. He knew exactly what movie he was directing. Just to be fun. It's definitely it's the fun side of horror. It's so fun to watch. It's very dissimilar to The Innocents that we watched, obviously, for the last episode of the show, which was very just sort of...
Well, I wasn't yelling at the screen for this one, so...
No, I mean, we were watching The Innocents, and we were just transfixed because we were kind of terrified. But watching House of Usher, we were just like watching Price and how wonderful he is, and just all the colours and all the just... this is so perfect to look at.
Movies so much.
Yeah, Corman was sometimes criticized for the amount of fun in these, because it's Edgar Allan Poe's writing, and he's not famous for his fun, you know? So you're getting like some of the prose of Poe, but really not the feel of Poe or the color palette, as you said. So they weren't super beloved by certain critics when they came out with these, because Corman did take such a different approach to these. But I think they're great. I almost picked The Pit and the Pendulum for similar reasons. But I'm a big fan of all 8 of these.
Yeah, like you said, it is very un-Poe-like, but it is that weird, colourful spin that Corman does put on them. Because I am a fan of Poe, and the ideas are always there in these Price films. The core of the Poe story they're telling is always there, and the core of a Poe story is always the most interesting part, really, because it's twisted enough to just weird you out for a bit. But Corman, he brightens it up and he catches your eye every time. And obviously with Price as well, he's just loving every second. And yeah, I mean, you said to me on a number of occasions watching House of Usher how much it looked like a painting.
There's some shots in... I meant that both literally and kind of like metaphorically, because I'm pretty sure there are some shots in this where they look like they were drawn, and I didn't even care because it was drawn so beautifully, and cinematography works so well there. And then you have these shots where they're walking through the house, where all the colors like kind of complement each other, and it's just beautiful to look at. And you know, it feels like something that I would probably like hang on my wall or look at to get inspiration for writing something. Literally, you know, the saying is a cliche, but it's true. Like a picture paints 1,000 words, and those pictures they painted some words, all right.
Kimber, I want to know, because it had been a short while since I'd watched House of Usher until, before we watched it yesterday. This definitely came off to me as one of Price's more tragic characters. And obviously Roderick Usher is a tragic guy anyway, but Price really seemed to tap into tragedy a lot in this one. I don't know what you make of that and his ability to go into the more tragic sometimes as opposed to the wit.
Yeah, I think this one's pretty interesting because he's kind of a dude, like you said, who's crushed from the beginning. He believes, at least, that his family is cursed, and it's interesting to see him in a spot where he's not really having some sort of issue with a significant other of his, but this time it's his sister, because there's a man who's shown up who wants to marry her, and his biggest fear is having the Usher line continue, because he just believes that no matter what happens to his family down the line that it's going to be horrible, so he wants it to stop here. And it's really, you get like this descent into madness with him, and maybe he was a little mad when the story started, but since we're coming in with this new character who's never seen the brother before, we really get to see him kind of tumble into insanity at the prospect of his sister, you know, potentially having children with somebody someday. That's his biggest nightmare. And it's funny because really it's something so simple, and he sounds crazy even thinking that, but with all the things that have happened to his family, you can see his point.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's very fair to say that Roderick Usher was slightly mad from the beginning, because any Usher would be, knowing, once we get to know, obviously, the a bit of family history of theirs, and all that anyone listening needs to know about the story, the fall of the House of Usher, is that it is a family of basically a cursed family, because it's just a family of essentially criminals and just awful human beings that just turn each generation into madness. And this particular generation of Roderick Usher and Madeline Usher, Roderick's kind of, he seems to have been, at least from his point of view, obviously we don't get too much detail on family history, but he seems to be the first Usher to actually realise we're bad people, and it's very sad, and that's why I say Price really taps into the tragedy in this movie. But Roderick Usher definitely realises that, we can't continue. And it's obviously the main conflict is between him and Philip Winthrop, Mark Damon's character.
The guy who looks like Clark Kent.
The guy who you constantly said looked like Clark Kent. And Elvis at one point as well.
There's one point where he looks like Elvis, and I'm not so sure if that's just because you've got an Elvis painting here, and then there's point where he looks like Clark Kent, and I'm like, oh, it's not that he looks like those specific characters, but he's sort of playing into that archetype. Because I love it when a story like this, and especially since it's a Poe thing, can take these archetypes and you think that it's going in one way, but then it just completely surprises you at the end. And like this one did it, and it's actually made me curious. I mean, we were at this Gothic library earlier today where there was the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe. I'd be curious to read the source material for this movie, because you guys know I'm a big adaptation guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
They don't have happy endings. That's the thing with Poe.
No,
well, definitely not.
None of them have happy endings. And I mean, you say you were surprised at the end of this movie. What was it that surprised you? Was it just the sense of
just the utter madness, really? And
just the intense.
For a moment, I had no idea what was going on until, like, you explained the whole thing, that it came from a sort of history of, say, mental illness and what these people were like. And even then, when even that final shot where it's going all mad with the colors and everything, it's so intense and it's so scary. But the great thing I found about it was you couldn't look away, because the way it was shot looked so beautiful. And then that's down to Corman and the cinematography. And I love it when you don't only have the characters that help you tell the story, but you have everything around it packaged, and it sort of complements each other and just brings it all together. I love well-packaged movies, and this was definitely one of them. Especially your Blu-ray cover. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I do, admittedly, I do have quite a nice copy of, like, proper 4K restored copy of House of Usher, so it looks pristine, and it's just great. Kimber, I do want to get your thoughts on another little thought I had while watching it, which is sort of thematically this story. It's almost like family can be a negative thing. It's like
the scariest rom-com I've ever seen.
Yeah,
really.
But I mean, family is not painted in the best light. The idea of family is not painted in the best light in House of Usher. I don't. I think the question really is, does this story sort of, is the message step away from your family and it will be safer, or is the message embrace your family?
Yikes.
I think that it's about baggage
more
than anything else. And in this particular instance, his baggage is his family's history. And I do think a lot of it comes down to, like you were saying, unfortunately, like in these times, it wasn't as easy to diagnose mental illness. And sometimes that stuff can run in families.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they're using it as a metaphor or simplifying it down to just family can be terrible. But I think for him, his baggage is the mental illness, and for the sister, her baggage is the brother, because I think it seems to affect him more than it affects her. You get the impression that she met Philip separately from the brother, and that she was doing much better then, but now she's in the house and she's ill and she's not doing well, and I don't know how far we're getting into the plot, but
we can go all the way.
This is basically a spoiler talk kind of thing.
Yeah, he kind of like chooses to bury her alive.
He does.
And I think that just shows to how desperate he is to kind of end. To him, I don't think he's trying to end the family line as much as he's just trying to end the madness. He doesn't want another person to have to go through all these things that he's had to feel in his life. And so he's symbolically trying to end suffering that is his now, but could potentially be another person in his family's later. It's the same suffering to him.
See, this is exactly why we brought Kimber on. I love this.
Exactly.
I love this sort of more focus on. I don't know why I necessarily focused on the idea of family, but you know, I don't know. My family are great. I don't know why I think that.
Your mother is a lovely woman.
But I like that you focus on the mental illness aspect of it, because he is very clearly mentally scarred, very, very clearly. And I remember the butler saying on one occasion that Madeline had only sort of started becoming ill, quote unquote ill, since she'd come back from Boston. And Boston is where she met Philip.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Boston must have been this great place, but the House of Usher drags you back in. All the baggage drags you back in. You can't get rid of it until it eventually goes pretty horribly wrong for everybody, and crumble, destroy.
But I love how it kind of plays with that, but at the beginning, you're unsettled right away when you're in this place. Like, this butler, I believe, my reaction to him, I think, made you laugh. I just said, oh, what's creepy Alfred doing here? And he's asking him to, like, take off his riding boots, and the way they kind of focus on that kind of reaction, I'm just like, okay, I can tell something bad is going to go here, but I don't know what's going to happen, and it keeps giving you these, like, little seeds all the way through, and I'm sure that's probably a testament to the source material as well, but that is also a testament to how well Corman directs this.
Yeah.
And just sort of plants them in there, lets you see them, and then at the end you might be shocked and think like, oh, what the hell just happened, like I have with most of the movies that we watch on here. But then as you're piecing it together and you're thinking about everything that has happened, like even little details, like what I said to you earlier was like, I thought that weird stuff that was bubbling in a pot, I thought that was what was making her ill at one point. Like they were doing it forcibly, but then to see that no, it's actually it comes from this whole mental illness thing. That's something that you can't control, especially back then when they didn't have a lot of ways that they could control mental illness.
Yeah,
it just adds to the more tragic element of it. And I'd be curious actually to see what an updated version of this story might do, given how much we know of mental illness. But I kind of like that this is treated like it really shows you the tragedy of it, and that can be just as scary. Like, just the existence of mental illness is frightening, and you don't need any other aspects to make that scary. You just have this little simple concept executed pretty perfectly.
I think you two are having a much better conversation than I'm having right now. I would, I love this. I actually love the idea of that. I mean, obviously, this movie was made in 1960. There was a bit of, mental illness diagnosis had developed since the setting of the story.
Yeah.
In the 19th century, but it hadn't got to the stage we're at now. So, when you say an updated version, would you set it the same?
I don't know. I mean, I'd be curious to see someone take a similar concept to this and do it in modern day, because with as much as we know about mental illness now, the execution could be very different, and it might not be as good, or, as great or anything, but it could be, an interesting new take. Probably wouldn't, though, stop it with the remakes, Hollywood. Seriously, get rid of those Aladdin teasers.
Kimber, what do you make of that?
At least this one's old, though. That's a thing. They're remaking stuff that's too new to remake.
I can't wait for the remake of Infinity War to come out.
Yeah, exactly.
Next year. It's most likely. Kimber, what do you make of that, then?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, but I think that this movie is layered because the mental illness, the madness rather, seeps into everything that's around them. I think that the House of Usher, even as a title, kind of is a double meaning because it means the House of Usher, just like the House of Slytherin, like the family name, the group name, but it also kind of has a part of the house that they're in as well, because you get the impression that this has been the house that the family has been in for so many generations, that all of this terrible energy seeps into the very walls of this place, and that's why when the sister comes back she has such a bad reaction, because it's like almost like how Amityville Horror is, or the murder house in American Horror Story, that the building itself is holding all this terrible energy of the people that have been there and the things that have been done in this place.
Very, very much so. At one point, Price does say that they actually brought the house over from England to New England, and so you know just how old this house is.
That explains the butler.
Yeah.
They brought him too.
They brought him. Just how many generations of Usher, and of course we see all the generations of Usher in the lovely tomb that they've got downstairs.
Those paintings freaked me out.
The crypt, the paintings are glorious. Are you joking? I would hang those up.
I would hang those up, but I would be freaked out.
You'd be freaked out.
I'm not opposed to having freaky stuff hanging up in my room, but it's still going to be freaky stuff. I have a picture of Pennywise in my room, and it's still fucking terrifying.
By freaky, do you mean freaky or freaky?
Well, not so much a sexual freaky.
Okay.
But,
we just wanted to be safe there.
Kind of unsettling, but you also can't look away. It's like how most people describe car crashes. Exactly.
Well, I wouldn't have a picture of a car crash.
I would hope not. They look pretty boring.
That'd be boring,
Oh my god.
That's we're getting into a dangerous area right now.
If anyone has been in a car crash recently, I'm sorry.
Exactly. Alienating listeners, Nolan Dean since
this podcast started.
Since early 2018.
Anyway, back to the movie, right?
Back to the idea of the house itself being alive, because this house shakes. This house is alive. It's got a heart.
To the point where they had to kill the house.
Exactly. To the point where the house itself is what dies.
Did this movie unintentionally inspire Monster House?
I don't know. I've not seen Monster House in years. Probably, though.
Oh. Monster House is a hidden gem. Definitely check that out. Dan Harmon wrote Monster House.
Oh, fair enough. I did not know that. There's another recommended. There's a Halloween. Put that on your Halloween list, people. That's what we.
You can also see how this movie would have influenced future horror films. From the color scheme alone, I was thinking Suspiria. Suspiria probably definitely took some inspiration from this kind of stuff. Once you start talking about giallo films, you get into a whole other weird realm of weirdness. But all of these Corman Poe films are very brightly coloured. They don't shy away from it at all, and it is very much a
important element of them. I always say, I've said this on this show before, if you're going to use colour, use it properly.
Yeah.
I would rather see a black and white movie where shadows and lighting are done properly than a colour movie where it's just done for the sake of, people look, people see people in colour. If you're not going to use colour, I don't mind whether it's colour or black and white. But if you're going to use colour like something like Suspiria does, or like a Roger Corman Vincent Price movie does, then I want nothing more than glorious Technicolor. Because it's great.
And I think some of it might be a product of the time, too, because when they were filming stuff in black and white, of course, like, everything on the set wasn't black or white.
Yeah.
They had to use different colors to achieve the certain grays they were looking for, and sometimes that was, like, a magnificent gold or a bright pink on something that you would never imagine that it was that color. And I think that some of that is transferring over to them using those exaggerated colors, but now, color in film is kind of a newer thing, and it's the in-between stage where you're getting stuff that's standing out so much because they're still getting used to how they're going to film color. Maybe they didn't, if I don't make this so bright, it's not going to show up, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah. Because Nolan, you always say it looked like a painting.
It does,
in the best possible way.
It also brings up to something that I always say as well, like, not only a color, but, like, dark and lightness. This is ultimately a very dark movie. It has a very dark subject matter.
Yeah.
But the idea of that being packaged around a lot of this bright stuff, I mean, what was I saying to you earlier when we were taking a walk down the town? If you're going to do something dark, you can't just wallow in darkness. You got to have, like, a bit of, like, bright, whether that's literal brightness from the color palette, or like or like the romantic element, which could be seen as a little bit of brightness. You need that to sort of make the darkness more tragic.
Yeah.
And that here is done masterfully, despite one specific moment which we both brought up.
What was that?
You know it, when Madeline is quite ill, she's not eating, and what's the guy's name again? Philip. Right? Philip comes up to her and just straight up goes like, "I will not have scrawny women in my house." Like, that's when you're reminded this is definitely from the 60s.
Oh, that's true, actually. He does say that. I remember saying that.
And I was liking him up to then, and then he said that, and I'm just like, oh, for God's sake, man.
No, don't be silly, Madeline. No, Madeline, don't be silly. I will not have scrawny women in my household. It's like...
But that's a product of the time.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Worse things in much more recent movies. I can forgive that one.
Oh yeah, give you that. Yeah, of course it is. It's just kind of funny, and it's funny in this point. I like doing a weird impression of it.
Old-timey voice is probably one of your best impressions. I'm not gonna lie.
I love this idea that you talk about, though, Nolan, of this. In a dark movie, have a lot of brightness around it to emphasize the dark, and of course that works both ways as well.
Yeah, if you want a movie to be happy, then it'll be happier if there's darkness around it, and then they end up happy despite that darkness. Like that's usually how I go about writing stories. It's a hard balance to get, but this one is something that I would watch if I was trying to get into that mood.
Yeah, I admit it's not an idea I think a great deal about. I'm no writer. I don't really... I just talk strangely about things for no real reason. That's what I do with my time.
You definitely have the voice of what I imagine a writer would be.
That's no use, though, is it?
No, I mean, not like a writer nowadays, like John Green or something. You'd definitely be a writer, like, back in the 1800s.
But I live...
He's the narrator.
Oh, definitely. Yes, that Kimber's onto it. You are the narrator. That will forever be his nickname for the rest of this show. It's a wonderful podcast with the narrator and that other guy.
I already have a nickname. I think you'll find, as we all know, I do not need a second one.
What, Ed Sheeran?
No. What is my... Oh, that's true. Actually, I do have another nick. I have so many nicknames these days, guys. Everybody keeps giving me nicknames. I don't know what to do anymore. I've lost the plot. It's no use for me being a writer in the 1800s when I don't live in the 1800s, though, is it?
No, but you wish you could live in the 1800s.
I don't. It was a horrible time to be alive. I really don't. Kimber, please stop me from rambling on about something I'm probably gonna regret saying.
I guess let's talk about the death of the house a little bit more.
Okay.
Because really that's kind of like the dramatic conclusion of the movie. Do you think that this was a proper ending for something like this?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I'm sure you guys will agree with me on this. Like, I always say that the most important parts of stories are the opening and the finale, to see if they kind of complement each other in a way. And the opening for this is, you see the house and it does look a little bit scary, but there's kind of a beauty about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the final shot of it being sinking down after burning, I mean, it kind of shows you that beauty doesn't last. Sometimes it'll sink into the swamp. There's our Shrek reference for the episode.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Well, how you have managed to wheedle one of those into
I just see it as my job for the show, to be honest.
This is an episode talking about House of Usher, and you have managed somehow to squirm in a Shrek reference, and it was an organic one, and I'm so proud.
Yeah, but I'll go.
Hey now, he's an all-star.
Yeah.
Can we have Kimber on for more guest episodes on this chemistry?
Oh, anytime we do a Price.
I'm down for that.
Anytime we do a Price.
Just like that final shot, though, there's something so tragic, yet it's also kind of got a beauty in itself. Like, you know, maybe you have to destroy something so it can be reborn into something else.
You could see
maybe
it like
this
that.
family line had to be destroyed so it wouldn't be spread and like spread darkness to everybody else. Maybe you could look at it as kind of this whole, like, the ends justify the means kind of thing.
You know, like,
and when
almost
a movie has that kind of layer to it, I mean, it just leaves you with asking questions. Like, as soon as you finish watching this, I think we spent like the next 2 hours discussing philosophical stuff.
Do you know what? I think we did. Do you mean like a greater good type situation?
Yeah, that's the kind of vibe I got from it.
Yeah, I think Roderick Usher is definitely going for the, we need to die for the greater good of the world. Otherwise, we will just cause harm to other people. But
they also kind of destroyed themselves, too. Like, he destroyed it.
They do, but I mean...
which is an interesting kind of role for a quote-unquote antagonist to take, realizing he has to destroy himself.
Yeah, which is why I say that this is one of Price's more tragic roles.
I mean, I wouldn't really call this character a villain, but he's definitely... If we're to assume that Philip is the protagonist, Price is definitely the antagonist.
No, yeah, he definitely is. He definitely is.
I think there's an interesting juxtaposition between the movies that you saw with him, too, because he's very different here than he is on House on Haunted Hill. Because that was a man who was very much in control and 5 steps ahead of the situation. And Roderick here in this one, he is a man who is falling apart and not in control of the situation and not handling things well and causing much more harm than he could have been had he dealt with things in a more rational manner. So to go from those being the 2 movies that you've seen, obviously other than Edward Scissorhands, which is kind of a whole different story because most people our age have seen Edward Scissorhands.
No, that just makes me cry.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, the tragedy of Price, Price's Roderick Usher. It reminds me of him in The Haunted Palace as well, as Charles Dexter Ward, who, again, that's almost kind of like a family curse type deal. Well, not in the same way, but it's Price not being in control of himself. And he is able to play that so well, but then, like Kimber said, when he's able to go House on Haunted Hill, just huge smile on his face, knows exactly what everyone's doing, knows exactly how to play the game, Price. It's more fun to watch, and equally as impressive as this more sort of sad to watch character.
Since I don't know much about Price, I'd be curious about this. Did he ever play, like, iconic characters from fiction, or did he kind of create iconic characters through his performances? Because I don't know if he's played anyone iconic.
Well, I mean, these are Edgar Allan Poe stories, so they're certainly iconic in their own right. But there are also characters like he was in the original The Fly.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to. Yeah, he's played iconic characters and he's made characters iconic, but certainly he's done them in a way that no one else will or ever has. You know.
I mean, obviously he was in Last Man on Earth as well, which is I Am Legend.
Basically, I use that question as an excuse for you guys to give me recommendations.
Recommendations on Price. So,
Tomb of Lygia.
Yes.
And I know that that Morgan likes Witchfinder General a lot.
Christ.
Dr. Phibes.
Do you know what? Dr. Phibes is a weird one because I don't like Price not speaking.
Yeah. But it's something different.
It is something different, and you will get a little bit of different with every Price role. I do like Witchfinder General. Obviously, we've done Witchfinder General for this show.
You don't have to remind me. I'm still suffering from PTSD from Witchfinder General.
No, Nolan hated Witchfinder General. It was too much. It was too heavy. It was too graphic for him. It was
How about House of Wax? Theater of Blood.
Theater of Blood is great.
Those do sound great. I've seen House of Wax before, and that is just like a genius concept in and of itself.
The Vincent Price one?
Yeah. I saw that when I was I think I was like 10 when I saw it, to be fair, so my memory of it's not that.
We should watch House of Wax again. Theater of Blood's great, though. You'd like Theater of Blood. It's basically, he's like a stage actor that hates his critics, and he goes around killing all of his critics in Shakespearean ways.
It's a little meta.
That sounds like it was made for me.
Yeah, and it's set in like present day. It's set when it's set. It's set when it's made. So it's kind of unusual in that sense. Like sometimes, like House on Haunted Hill, I suppose, is set when it's set as well. But I like Edgar Allan Poe Price when he's in period clothing and 19th century.
He looks great for it.
And he looks great for it. The Raven as well is a silly movie, and you have to watch it.
Yeah.
And The Pit and the Pendulum, which I know I mentioned before, but that's arguably the best of the Edgar Allan Poe ones that he did. It's really great.
I should probably see The Raven so I can wash the stench of that John Cusack one out of my mouth.
Oh no, you won't be able to forget about The Raven. There is a scene in The Raven in which Vincent Price sits opposite an old Boris Karloff, and they cast spells at each other. It's
Where
about
is this movie? I need it right now.
It is about wizards. It doesn't make any sense, and it's whilst may I add, Peter Lorre is getting absolutely hammered in the background and shouting at his son.
You guys are just like speaking to my soul right now.
It's the way that Morgan explains it makes it so much better, though.
The thing is, though, Kimber, is The Raven not the stupidest movie?
I mean, I guess, but there's a lot to be said about a lot of classic horror being kind of stupid, but that's what's great about it.
Exactly,
you know?
Exactly.
I mean, the one with John Cusack, I think, was just like if Saw was in the Victorian era. So this one, at least if it's
breathing
silly.
life into the John Cusack one. No one has mentioned that.
Yeah, we're not.
That's my only reminder of The Raven is that really bad John Cusack one that I thought I was being an edgy teenager watching, and then I was just bored.
You keep bringing up John Cusack for no reason.
Poe is turning in his grave.
Poe probably is turning in his grave. He probably buried himself alive, the madman.
I could actually see that being one of his stories.
Yeah. I mean, I did want to talk about this as well, actually. I almost forgot about it, and it is the insane dream sequence.
Oh, yeah, please go on.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. I mean, it's the most insanely colourful part, because it has those... It evokes, for me, like the like silent filmmaking, because of the filters that are on it. Like, you get this blue filter, and then it sort of goes to a red filter very quickly and back to a blue one. And I mean, when you've got a red filter on a movie, it's natural to think, oh dear, bad stuff. But then, and then when the blue comes in, though, is when all, like, the spirits of the dead ushers are haunting his mind. And the blue gives me this sort of deathly, earthly, heavenly type quality. It gives me that feel. And it's very... Blue, to me, is a very, like, ethereal colour. And it's a very spiritual colour. And it's very, very haunting, this scene. I think this scene takes a lot, weirdly, from 2 years before the dream sequence in Vertigo, which is flashes of colour. I think this one takes a lot from that. Even the way that Mark Damon, Philip Winthrop wakes up really reminds me of Jimmy Stewart in Vertigo. From that dream.
Question for you,
please.
After you've went through that lengthy color theory description,
that
explained
might
it so eloquently with that accent.
It may have been
got
nonsense.
One question: why am I the video essayist out of us? You should get onto that.
The thing is, I just say what I feel, even though it may be wrong, or whether it's not necessarily wrong. But I might have just talked absolute garbage.
How do you think I write most of my scripts?
And
secret's out, y'all.
I'm just saying, Kimber, please give us your thoughts on this dream sequence to stop me going on about spirituality anymore.
I think the dream sequences are fun in a lot of movies because it gives them an excuse to really mess around and do some interesting things that they couldn't do if the characters were awake. And they really took advantage of it here. And I miss stuff like this in movies, which is why I'm so refreshed when we have directors like Nicholas Winding Refn using these beautiful, bright colors, because it's a throwback to a time where movies looked like movies to me.
Yeah.
You get so much of these movies where they want like hyper realism. They want you to watch it on an HD TV and make it look like you're there. But to me, it's kind of unfortunate because there was something to be said about actors using like movie voice and having this filter that to me made it look like a big budget movie. So I'm excited by stuff like this, and I wish that current movies would kind of take a hint from stuff like this and be inspired by it, because not every movie needs to look just like you're really in the room with somebody. Like, I understand that, but there's also something to be said for these weird choices that remind you that you're watching a movie.
Yeah, and it depends on the kind of story you're trying to tell. I mean, like, real world settings for me work for something like an Aaron Sorkin drama or like a David Fincher movie or something like that. But for something like this, for as much like fantastical horror that we get nowadays, I'm always asking myself, why don't they take advantage of the color scheme? Why does everything have to look like it was dragged through a muddy Photoshop filter? Take advantage of that color if you can, like, especially if you're leering into something like this, which is using color to its advantage.
Yeah.
As you so eloquently put in your beautiful Manchester accent.
Maybe. Nolan, I'd like to point out that as soon as Kimber said the words Nicholas Winding Refn, your face did something.
I am a big fan of Nicholas Winding Refn, and I love that you mentioned him because, like, Drive and The Neon Demon are two of my favorite modern day movies for that exact reason, because even if you don't have a clue what's going on in them, and sometimes I don't, because I'm
not the Neon Demon, Madness movie.
But you're so enthralled by it, and the color for those is just, it's used so well. Like, if you're gonna use a technique like color theory or a certain filmmaking technique, have a story-based reason for it. Don't just use it for like a flashy kind of nothing scene, because that's just gonna be like, it's going to be like, look, when you go to a kid's art project and you've just seen someone throw paint over a canvas. It's really going to mean nothing. But when you use it and you have a purpose for it, and you can have fun with it and just really take it as far as it can go, that works, and that makes for a more enjoyable experience. I can only imagine what this looks like on VHS. Like, I'd imagine it would look quite interesting considering we watched it in 4K.
Well, it wasn't. It's. I mean, the television isn't 4K. I just think the disc is. I don't know. It's weird. I would like to know what you two think of the sort of, the really bright sort of garish gore that you get in Hammer films, for instance, or films or Corman films like this. What do you think that because I know you mentioned children splattering on a piece of artwork. Yeah. Does that come off as that? Does it come off as schlocky to you?
No, not for this.
Or does the fact that the blood is often so bright come off as effective because they want to emphasize the violence or whatever it may be?
For me, it's kind of like, how red is like blood, but it could also mean like human.
Okay.
So that kind of works with this whole dream sequence thing. And what I mean by the whole kid thing is, like, if you see a director using color just for the sake of using color, it's not going to work. But for this, it feels like Roger Corman had a reason for going way above and above, just because it was a dream sequence, and it paid off because it doesn't distract you. It kind of just keeps the whole thing moving along.
Kimber, what do you make of that idea?
Yeah, for me, it's really simple. I've always liked stuff like that, which is why I like a lot of older films and a lot of foreign horror films, because older horror movies and foreign horror movies remember that horror can be fantasy. Yeah. And that they are making art with their movies, just like any artistic film. These ones just happen to be horror movies. And I think that there's something really beautiful about that. I think that American, nowadays terms for what a horror movie is are not broad enough. Like, people need to understand that you can do strange things with horror because it's such a broad genre. It's not just these generic slasher movies and these generic Halloween time low budget horror movies that are coming out. You can have people who are real artists, which is why stuff like the original Suspiria are going to stand the test of time, because they did something that was a piece of art and that was truly unique. And I wish that instead of just pumping out as many horror movies as they could, they would take their time and put out a movie when they had something beautiful.
Yeah, and it's not even as though you need an overly elaborate story.
You don't. Most stories, I get frustrated about this because people ask me about writing. They're like, "Oh, how do you come up with your stories? Like, it must be so complicated." Simple narratives executed in an interesting way, like this movie, can be just as effective as something complicated. It's something that I always say is that if you have a simple narrative but you make the characters complex and interesting, it's going to stick with you. If you spend too many time focusing on a complex narrative and your characters aren't interesting, that's going to create the opposite effect. So it's all about kind of finding that balance. But, I find it easier to get into stuff that's more simple but executed in a creative way over complex, maybe executed in a somewhat creative way, but it's too complex for me to even understand it. I've said the word complex too many times. For fuck's sake, please stop me, right?
Well, you can, you can never say that Roger Corman was not creative in what he did.
Oh, definitely. He's definitely creative.
He knew, like I said before, he knew exactly how to make this kind of movie, this kind of really simple movie, but you said, executed just in as perfect as it could be, as perfect as a weirdly fantastical, dark but bright movie that this is.
And I agree with what Kimber says. Like, don't half-ass it, like, just to make money, because horror does have that advantage. You can do something low budget and make a ton of money from it, and not really do anything with it, and people just see it because it's a horror movie. Yeah, that's how you get shit like The Nun. Please stop it with that kind of stuff.
Do you know what? The Nun. I haven't seen The Nun.
Do not waste your time.
Kimber, you didn't see The Nun, did you?
Don't waste your time.
No, I like good movies.
Oh, that won't alienate any of our...
I don't think any of our audience is Nun fans, let's be honest.
They're not getting none of my money for that one.
Have you been hanging out with Billy too much? All these puns.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Do you not love it so much, though? No,
I do.
I really do. Before we do start to wrap up, I did want to bring up one little extra element about Price's performance that I really find
the blonde
very interesting. Not only the blonde hair that you think looks like Grindelwald for some reason, it's the fact that this seems... I think this is his most whispery performance that I can remember. He never like elevates his voice even to a speech. Everything's always very, very quietly spoken. He sounds like me. Everything's always really quietly spoken, really whispered. That, of course, could be due to the fact that Roderick Usher is internally incredibly scared and incredibly damaged. He doesn't want Philip involved because he doesn't want to affect Philip's life. But this whispering sort of thing, it gives him, it not only gives him this oddly sinister vibe, but it does give him this very fragile vibe as well. I just really like how... Obviously, I don't know if Price was told to whisper these lines, or he just did it anyway. I mean, he does it, so I've got to give him some credit for pulling it off. I've got to give everyone credit for making this movie as it's made. But I just think the whispery nature of Roderick Usher in this movie is a really great way of conveying this very damaged yet quite sinister character.
I can explain to you how that works.
Okay.
So from the courses that I took in film school, and especially like with acting and stuff, they always told me that the reason shouting and that doesn't usually work in these kind of things is because if someone's voice is very loud, you're not really scared, you're more shocked, and you're not really listening to everything, the volume's kind of like screwing with your mind and stuff. But with the stuff like he's like whispering and being all quiet, what makes that sinister is that because of that, you're hanging on every word.
Yeah, I get that.
And it's almost like what Corman does with the mysteries. It's like planting seeds. And if you're hanging on every word that Price says because he says it so calmly and just like how a normal person would say, that can actually be scary because like imagine what this movie would be like if Price was yelling all his lines. Probably not as effective.
Price has never yelled in his life.
I'm pretty sure he hasn't.
Kimber, what do you make of this?
I think it was a character choice.
Yeah.
I think, one, he is a broken man. He's broken by his fear, like we talked about. But I also think that, like, he tries to internalize his feelings because he's scared of losing control.
Mm-hmm.
He's scared of that he might go crazy.
Yeah.
And so he's trying to suppress it, because he is so terrified of the person he might become if he lets go. And I do think it's an interesting choice for him because he is such a grand persona in a lot of his movies, and he is loud, and he is a great yeller. He yells.
Yeah, he does.
He yells in Tomb of Lygia.
He
for
does
sure.
yell.
But this is kind of more of a subdued performance, but I do think it's from a character perspective as well as I did like what Nolan said, perhaps from a directorial stance, having him talk lower, just so they talk about that a lot in Game of Thrones, like Roose Bolton, he whispers, and he whispers because he wants you hanging on every word that he says, and I do think that there's something to be said about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I do like this idea of quiet people, they're quiet for a reason. They don't want to give themselves out to the world. The introverts are always quiet. You never get an introvert that speaks loudly, because it doesn't make sense.
I've never met one.
Yeah, Roderick Usher is introverted because he doesn't want... No, I suppose it's not necessarily he doesn't want his family secrets to get out. It's just that he doesn't want his family continuing.
And there's a lot of that.
Yeah, he doesn't want to spread the madness in general, I think, with him.
Yeah. So, I really like that. I just wanted to bring that up just before we began to wrap up just as another wonderful element to Price's character in this wonderful movie, The House of Usher, or The Fall of the House of Usher, because it has both titles. You can use either. I don't know which one you prefer.
Fall of the House of Usher, I think sounds cooler.
That's the full title of the original story.
Fall of Usher sounds like a documentary about the singer Usher.
No, that's not the title.
Yeah. House of Usher.
House of Usher is what the film was originally called.
House of Usher, if you said that to me and I didn't know what this movie is, I'd assume we were going to Usher's house.
You keep bringing up the singer Usher, and I don't like it.
I'm the millennial here, I have to do that.
What are the rest of us?
Well, you don't act like a regular millennial, let's be honest.
But that's.
I'm still a millennial. I don't know if you're old enough to technically be a millennial.
Am I? Okay, well I'm gonna look this up after the show.
When's the cut-off year?
I don't know. It changes every week.
I thought we were right on the edge. I don't know anymore. That's
birth
a weird.
Years.
That's a weird Earth years, as opposed to what?
I said birth years.
Or birth years. Yeah. I thought you meant Earth. I thought we were living in some sort of weird planet then. Earth years as opposed to Vulcan years.
You're always hanging out on a weird planet. What?
A fantastic planet.
Yeah, that's another thing.
A fantastic planet. There's a great movie that everybody should watch. Guys, we have just gone over the hour mark, and we like to keep these episodes to about an hour. Kimber, this has been so wonderful, you coming on and showing your love of Vincent Price and the House of Usher, because we love you. We love having you on. We would love to have you back on as guest if we can figure out an easier way to have guests on.
Absolutely. You know, I'm always welcome to joining your conversation, and Morgan, you're one of my favorite people. Nolan, we host a show together already, and you're my buddy, so of course, anytime.
I'm a favorite person. I'm sorry, that was very selfish.
Yeah, but I'm her companion, so
that's true. That's true. I mean, not strictly true.
Well, in the Doctor Who sense, maybe.
In the Doctor Who sense, you certainly are. Kimber, before we get out of here, though, and wrap up episode 26 talking about House of Usher, what have you got going on? What's happening?
Well, I'm sure that this isn't going to come out tonight, but I am about to go film the horror episode of Odd Shaped Panel live, so if you guys are into horror, you can come check out that episode. Both of these guys are going to be joining us there, so you can hear what they have to say about horror movies.
Yay.
And on the 29th of October, we're going to be doing our 3rd annual Odd Shaped Panel Halloween costume party episode, where we discuss Halloween in pop culture, and you guys can join us for that. I'm definitely looking forward to it, and I hope to see you both there for that one as well.
I have to make sure that my Hufflepuff robes arrive by then.
Of course you're a Hufflepuff.
Yeah, it was between a Hufflepuff or the Edward Scissorhands outfit, but I don't think I can rock leather, so I'm gonna go Hufflepuff.
I'm sat here amongst a Hufflepuff and a Slytherin when everybody really knows that I belong in Durmstrang.
You're definitely a Ravenclaw.
I mean, I don't know anymore. I think I'll just be a squib and be done with it.
That is such a you thing to say. Oh, yeah.
Nolan, are you doing anything different apart from after this recording joining me and Kimber and everybody else and on OSP?
Well, everyone knows this because I never shut up about it.
No, you don't.
Well, DV Pit is tomorrow, and if you guys don't know, DV Pit is where diverse authors, so like authors of color, queer authors, LGBT authors, all the diverse authors try to pitch their stories for agents and help them out with that. And it's how I got first interest in my book Moonflower. So I'm trying that again tomorrow to see if I can get any more interest. So if you guys see any of my tweets there, just give them a retweet. Don't like them because that's for agents. I know the rules are weird, but that's just how they are. And if I'm lucky, we might do this before we actually go on OSP. I might finish writing the final chapter of Moonflower tonight.
Ooh.
So if that happens,
big step, guys.
And if this does happen, like if I send this back to the agent that showed interest and I get a book deal, I promise I'm not going to leave the show.
Well, I would be very offended.
Just like this story has meant so much to me writing it, and it's sort of like healed me and made me a better person. So if I can get the chance to share that with all of you guys, that'll make me a very happy writer. And also, go check me out on Stories as Lessons. We're going to do one about Halloween, and I have to try and figure out another horror-themed one to do before October. But
it is October.
For November, I am planning on doing an extended Harry Potter Stories as Lessons, maybe even an hour long. Because the first time I did Harry Potter, I don't think I quite nailed it as much as I should have. And you guys know how big a fan I am of that series, so I'm giving that a shot again.
Guys, if that wasn't a immense...
check out Space Time Rewind because it's awesome.
That's a fair plug, I like it. If that wasn't an insanely passionate display of love for someone who is writing something they love. I don't know what I'm even saying. I'm just trying to say that go and support him because he's a very passionate human being, and we should support passionate human beings. Kimber, am I right in saying that? I feel like I'm dying right now.
No, you got this.
I got this. Yes, by tomorrow, do you mean tomorrow or actually tomorrow when the episode's out?
I mean on it's on Tuesday, I know that much.
You mean about 4 days ago?
Yeah. I mean, you could go back and find those tweets. I'll probably have them pinned. You could give them a retweet.
There you go. Do that. Guys, I want to thank Kimber again for coming on and talking the House of Usher. Her choice for episode 26 of It's a Wonderful One. What am I doing? I'm not really doing anything. I do this show. It's great. It's called It's a Wonderful Podcast. If you haven't listened to it, which you just have done, and that would be weird if you think you haven't listened to it, you weirdo.
They just played it on mute.
Please.
Subtitles.
Please, no, it's time for some housekeeping. Please sub to the audio feeds on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever the hell else you'll find them. And
Grindr, Tinder.
No. And download the episodes as well. Leave those 5-star ratings and maybe a little I love this show review, because it really helps the show grow, and we want growth in all aspects of our lives, including podcasting. So please, everybody, go and do that, and follow the show on Twitter at It's a Wonderful One with the number 1. Follow me on Twitter at the Purple Don with a 3 instead of the E in the, because Nolan, are you going to get it right this week?
3 is the magic number.
3 is... No. 3 is the magic number, is my new catchphrase. Because 3 is the magic number. Or on Instagram, at the Purple Don. No, 3, because Instagram's nice to me. Yeah. Nolan, where can people find you online?
Online, you can find me at NolanDean27 on Twitter. You can find my YouTube channel at NolanDean. You can find me on Grindr, probably looking really bad in my profile photo.
There's no reason.
You fancy that as well.
I don't need to know your intimate history.
Trust me, there's nothing intimate about it. Yeah, you can find me there, and you can also find me hanging out with my best buddy in his little bat cave.
It's not a bat cave. There's no bats in here.
Because I'm pretty sure that your mom wants to adopt me.
Oh, God. Oh, dear. Oh, dear, what's happening? Kimber, please save me from this hell and tell us where everybody can find you online.
Absolutely. You can find me at KimberBatch_OSP on Twitter and Instagram, and you can find me on YouTube at Odd Shaped Channel.
Wonderful. Guys, as always, thank you very much for listening to another episode of It's a Wonderful Podcast, because I just like saying the name. I like saying the name, Nolan. Buy the t-shirts. TeePublic/G9 Design. Buy the t-shirts, buy the mugs, and the notebooks and laptop cases, phone cases, cushions, pillows, Get your It's a Wonderful One pillow. Get it now.
Don't use them in pillow fights.
Don't use them in pillow fight. Well, you can do if you want.
Yeah, I guess so.
You can do if you want. I don't care. You can do you can do whatever the hell you want with your own pillow.
Oh, for Christ's sake,
That's a bit.
Why did you say that?
I don't know. I've been watching too much Big Mouth. Sorry, guys. What a stupid way to end the show, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Kimber, thank you again so much for coming on. Nolan, see us out.
Speaking of stupid ways to end the show.
He loves seeing us out. I tell him to do it every week. He's not very good at it.
If you like The Fall of the House of Usher, if you're a fan of the musician Usher, if you just like a good movie, check this one out. And until next time, guys, goodbye.
Bye.